Greetings to all of you and a hearty welcome to day 7 and the final session of this program on Java-based microservices. Before we proceed with the deliverables that we have planned for today, I'm sure by looking at the agenda, I'm sure all of you realize that almost all the modules here are completed except for the last one, isn't it? Am I correct in saying that? Right. So today the plan is to take you through the concept of fault tolerance mechanism or the circuit breaker mechanism. And we will look at what product is available that can help us to act as a circuit breaker. So that's the plan for today. But before we move on with this plan, I'm sure all of you are aware of the drill. First, we will look at look at a quiz which will help you to kind of review and revise whatever we have done in our previous day's session. And then we can get started with today's deliverables. Yeah. So before I do this, let's look at some questions that I've jotted down for yesterday's session, please. Yeah. We can start answering from question number 1 that you see on the screen. Which Spring Cloud Netflix project can be used as a client-side load balancer? I'm asking you about the Netflix project. Read the question clearly, please. I'm asking which Spring Cloud Netflix project can be used as a client-side load balancer? Yeah? Yes, Ribbon is the correct answer. Right? Second question. In latest versions of Spring Boot and Cloud, which is an alternative to Ribbon? Correct. Spring Cloud Load Balancer, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. Question 2.1, please. Once we have configured the client-side load balancer, there is no need for any server-side load balancers. True or false? Yes, it is false, isn't it? Yesterday itself, I had given you a hint that I'm going to ask this question in the quiz, right? And I had also told you what is the correct answer, right? So yes, the correct answer is false. Yeah. Question number 3, please. When a client-side load balancer is configured, instead of using discovery client object to get instances of your other microservice and you want to access them and then selecting one of it manually, you could use the object of dash, which can help you to choose an appropriate server or application instance for you. Correct. You will use an object of load balancer client, isn't it? Perfect. The last question for the quiz, please. The default strategy of the client-side load balancer in a typical Spring Cloud environment would be correct. Zone-aware load balancer, right? Correct. Zone-aware load balancer strategy, right? Perfect. So give me a minute, please. I'll just shut down all these. So thanks for attempting the quiz. And there are another set of questions that I've jotted down. So once we complete today's deliverables on fault tolerance and circuit breaker, we will come back and finish this quiz also before we close the session for today. Yeah, but for now, I'll just close this and then we can move on with today's deliverables. But before I do that, I'm opening the forum for Q&A, please. If you have any questions that you had that needed clarification, please go ahead. I've enabled all of you to unmute yourself. Yeah. So if there are any questions based on whatever we have done yesterday, go ahead, please. Are there any questions that you have noted down for which you have not got any clarifications or any answers till now? Are there any such pending questions, please? I don't see any questions coming in. So is it fair to assume that things are fine till now, all of you? Yes, great. And I also wanted to check with you, what is your status on the Top Gear assignment? Ideally, by now, you should have set up your Eureka server. You should have set up your microservices. And you, depending on your scenarios, you should have also enabled client-side load balancers. Have you done till then? Anybody has completed till then? Okay, so there says yesterday's part is left over. Okay, so client-side load balancer is still not updated. Fine. Anybody else who can give me an update of the status of your hands-on? Okay. Okay, microservices done. Okay, that's nice. Okay, then Eureka setup done. Load balancer is left out. Okay. Okay, fine. Good. Nice, guys. Very nice. I am very eager to look at all your implementations. Of course, I'll give you a week's time. So today is the last day. So you can take a week's time and maybe by 26th or 27th, or if you want to take that entire week till 29th or till May 5th, if you want me to give you time, I'm ready to give you that time. Okay. But honestly speaking, what we have seen is when we give too much of time, people don't work on it. Okay, that's what the statistics says according to what we have experienced from all these years at Wipro. So anyway, I'm okay to give you time, assuming that you guys will really work on it, because when you work, Savita does not gain anything, right? Of course, Savita gains happiness that yes, somebody was able to implement whatever has been learned. But when you learn and when you apply your knowledge, you are going to gain, isn't it? Yeah. So keep that in mind, please. Yeah. Are you all with me? Okay. Once the training is over, maybe by tomorrow, I will share all the PPT and all the other stuff. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay, great. So I guess it's time for us to continue with our session, please.
Savita, just one question I have.
Yes.
Arpit this side.
Hmm.
Uh, just a hypothetical question. Like when we were creating our microservices, we assigned port to 0 for because they should get some random port, right?
Correct.
But right now we played around only few microservices. So
Correct.
in uh, two or more than two microservices get assigned to same port.
If you have assigned random, is it?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely no. Because when some microservice has already taken a particular port, that port number is not available in the available port pool. So the next microservice that runs cannot take the same the port number. Okay. So internally it works on something called as a port pool. Whenever somebody has set up cloud environments, they can select whatever servers are running in this particular zone, what IP addresses should they pick up, what is the range of such IP addresses, what is the range of the available port numbers it has to pick up and all that. Okay. So absolutely not possible.
Okay, got it. Yeah. And just one more question. When we create our Spring Boot project from STS, there are few dependencies which do not have a version. What is the logic behind that?
Did you attend the Spring Boot introduction that we did on day 2, Arpit?
No, I didn't attend that.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the reason why we always mandate that people should not miss out on any day of the training, Arpit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like we have discussed about all these things on day 2. Are you, and hopefully you are part of the MS team at least?
Yeah, yeah, I am
Okay,
part.
so I request you to go back and look at the recordings of day 2,
Okay.
where if you are not very comfortable on Spring Boot, the day 2 recording will help you gain good knowledge on Spring Boot. But
Okay.
just to answer,
Mm-hmm.
in pom.xml file, if you look at the last part, there is a build plugin called as Spring Boot Maven plugin. The Spring Boot Maven plugin's job is to handle the version management between the dependencies and the parent version. If you look at the Spring Boot version, you have a parent entry, which is clearly saying which version of Spring Boot are we using as the parent. And the
Right.
rest of the dependencies should match the parent version. So handling the version dependencies will be handled by the Spring Boot Maven plugin. So me and you need not specify versions there because we don't know, right? Today you are using 2.6.6 Spring Boot version, and you might be using Timeleaf 1.4.6. But tomorrow some version of Spring Boot changes. Which version of Timeleaf is suitable, we might not know. So give that task to the Spring Boot Maven plugin, and that guy will take care of the version management.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sabita.
Oh, no problem. Nivedita, actually, the use case that we have given is kind of very self-explanatory. If you have gone through have you gone through the document of the assignment, please? Yes. So please note, unlike our other training programs where we clearly give assignment 1, you have to do it. Assignment 2, this is what you need to do, etc. This for microservices, we have given you a very high level case study. Very broadly, we have said that you need to design a assessment management application. Broadly, if you see a assessment management application, we want you to take care of 2 broader functionalities. One is a login functionality where a user can, where a user can not even log in, a register functionality where users can register for some assessment. For example, I want to take up some technical assessment at Wipro. Assume I can register for a technical assessment. Similarly, somebody wants to take up a behavioral assessment, they can register for a behavioral assessment. So your application should have the functionality where people can register for these 2 varieties of assessment. That is one part of it. Another part of it is when an admin logs in, the admin should be able to take a report. For example, admin will not do anything else. Admin should be able to take a report of what and all registrations have come in. So probably in one kind of table format, he should be able to see a report. Yeah. These are the 2 broader functionalities that we want you to implement. Yeah. And we have given you some hints there, like how many microservices you can go in for. Those are just recommendations. If you want to create less microservices or more microservices, that is absolutely left to you, because there's no correct answer for anything in microservice. Every architect has a different way of architecting. So you can decide to implement this functionality, how many microservices you will have. Yeah. And remember all the advantages and disadvantages that we have discussed about the microservice. Unnecessarily don't create too many multiple microservices, because when you do that, you are increasing the amount of network talking that happens between them. And you might also get into a disadvantage called nano service, right? Keeping all that in mind, you decide how many microservices you're going to create, and each microservice, what and all functionalities you're going to have. And to implement those functionalities, what model class are you going to have? What controller are you going to have? If you are planning to use a database, which I highly recommend, very similar to my examples, what database are you going to use? all that you can decide from scratch. And once your microservices is up, depending on the scenario, you can decide whether you want to enable one microservice talking to another microservice. Yeah. And once these are ready, again, these 3 projects you might have to implement, like the Eureka server, which will handle the registry service part of it. If you feel there are some functionalities which has to be load balanced, then you can implement client-side load balancer. And if you feel some functionalities are very important, failure of which can lead to a cascading failure, then you can implement circuit breaker. Yeah. So that is what is the broader explanation of the assignment, Nivedita. So purposely we have given a very broader perspective so that you guys also act as a small architect and architect your solution from scratch. So was that helpful, Nivedita? No response. Correct. Yeah. Correct, Nivedita. Because if you're a regular user, then you should get an option to register for appropriate assessments, right? But if you're an admin user, then you should ideally get an option just to see a report like that. Correct. Again, it's left to you. Even on the MS team, in case you guys want to kind of discuss broadly, not the solutions, but broadly, how are you going to implement or what is the broader strategy you guys want to use? Even that discussions you can do on the MS team, not a worry. Great. With that, I guess we are ready to start with the last module. So shall we, guys? Great. So a hearty welcome again to the last and the final session of our Java microservices training. And in this module, we'll be looking at the client-side circuit breaker. And initially, I will be giving you an introduction to Hystrix, which used to be one of the very widely used circuit breaker facility from Netflix OSS. But of course, in the latest versions of Spring Boot, there's no support for Hystrix from now onwards, from 2.4 onwards. But nevertheless, as I mentioned earlier yesterday also, some of you might already be working in a project where there is a little older setup, and maybe you guys are using Hystrix as your circuit breaker, or you might be expected to still support the same app. So it's better for me to give at least a broader idea of what was Hystrix and how did it work, etc. And then anyway, we will learn the new way of setting up circuit breaker, which is with circuit breaker with resilience 4G. Yeah. So let me introduce you to the objectives of this module first, please. We will first understand how software circuit breakers can help us to protect against cascading failures. Of course, I'll be introducing you to Spring Cloud Netflix Hystrix and what are some of the important Hystrix annotations and Hystrix kind of setup that you could use to implement your circuit breaker. And when we start using Hystrix, Hystrix also provides you a dashboard, which is called as the Hystrix dashboard. So once you have set up your circuit breakers and you want a simple monitoring facility of your circuit breaker, just to check the status of your circuit breakers, etc., you could use something called as Hystrix dashboard. So I'll probably also talk about how you could set up that and stuff like that. Plus, Spring Boot circuit breaker with resilience 4J is an alternative to Hystrix. So from 2.4.m1 version onwards of Spring Boot, Hystrix is no more supported. So as an alternative, we will be working with Spring Cloud circuit breaker with resilience 4J. Unfortunately, resilience 4J does not provide its own dashboard. Of course, resilience 4J, once you enable it, there might be some actuator endpoints that might be available using which you can get to know the status and some details about it. But it does not provide its own dashboard. So you can use other tools like Prometheus or New Relic. There are many other tools. Prometheus is a dashboarding option or a monitoring option that you could use that can help you to monitor your circuit breakers that has been set up with Resilience 4G. Yeah. So we will look at how you can set it up and how the entire stuff works. Okay. And please remember, once we complete all these and I show you the demo and all that, today being the last day, you are also expected to take up a quick assessment towards the end of today. And only when you clear it with 70% of marks, your training data gets updated. Yeah? I've clearly told about this in the training instructions. Yeah? So come, let's look at the concept of cascading failure. So before I talk about circuit breaker, which can help us to arrest some kind of cascading failures, it's important to understand what do you mean by cascading failure. Yeah. So for example, whenever we build a huge distributed enterprise application, and when we start implementing or using microservices based architecture to implement it, having large number of services as dependencies can lead to a cascading failure, right? And if you don't have measures and mechanisms to mitigate this kind of cascading failures, microservices architecture is a recipe for disaster. So imagine a scenario like this. This is my distributed app. Each of these rectangles you see, assume these are individual microservices which are handling individual core functionalities. Now, just to simulate a kind of cascading failure, if you look at this, the red rectangle here, assume this is a very important functionality. Yeah, and you can see here how they are related. This microservice is dependent on this microservice. This is dependent on this microservice, and this is in turn dependent on this red microservice. Right? Similarly, there is another microservice which is dependent on this. This microservice is dependent on this, and this is again dependent on this red microservice. Now, what would happen if this microservice fails or one functionality of this microservice fails? It's not that only this is failing, right? Because this is failing, this fails. Because this is failing, this fails. Because this is failing, this fails. Same thing happens here as, right? So I have just taken a very simple example, but just imagine scenarios. I talked about Netflix, right? In fact, Netflix was the first company to start implementing or using microservices architecture. And even till now, they run about 600 plus microservices at their setups. So imagine in such kind of setup where there is too much of dependencies, etc. If one microservice fails somewhere, it could lead to a cascading disastrous failures, right? So you should have some kind of mechanism to mitigate this. Yeah? Many of you might say, Savita, we are using the best of the class cloud infrastructure and mechanism. So I don't think so my microservices will fail. Please note that microservices do not fail only due to hardware issues. Microservices can even fail due to software issues also. For example, assume one microservice of yours is hitting some remote API. Okay, it's dependent on some kind of remote API, and that remote API fails. There is a cascading failure that's going to happen, isn't it? Yeah. But nevertheless, please remember a point. More distributed your system is, more opportunities for failure, right? For example, even with the best of the class cloud infra, even with the best of the class SLAs, for example, if I take Amazon's EC2, okay, assume you are running, you are using Amazon's cloud for your setup. So just to do a simple math, assume Amazon EC2, Elastic Computing Cloud, gives you about 99.95% uptime. That's the SLA. With the best in class SLA also, if you have a single app, yeah, you should be ready for 22 minutes downtime per month. This might not happen, but according to the SLA, this can happen, right? For a single app, you should be ready with all your mechanisms that 22 minutes downtime you might have per month. Meanwhile, if you take a microservice architecture where there are 300 interrelated services, 30 interrelated services, you should be ready for around 11 hours downtime per month, which is actually bad, right? And imagine something like Netflix, where there are more than 100 interrelated services. You should be ready for 36 hours downtime per month, isn't it? That's bad, right? So please remember, yes, good, having good infra, having good infra related replicators, all that is fine. But with the best in the class SLA also, there are chances of failure. So you should have other mechanisms for managing it. So here is where the circuit breaker pattern comes in. Before I talk about the software circuit breakers that we are going to implement and learn about today, we all of us have used circuit breakers. So if you just if you are working from home today and you have a look at your house, you will have a miniature circuit breaker in your house, right? MCB switches. Now, what if I just take an example of this MCB switch, which is a household circuit breaker? What does this MCB switch watch? The MCB switch, or a miniature circuit breaker, it watches a circuit. So in our case, it is watching that electric circuit. So whenever it is watching, whenever a failure occurs on that circuit, maybe there's too much of electricity flow that's happening, there's too much of voltage fluctuations that are happening, whatever, right? Whatever failures that happens, miniature circuit breaker or MCB switch identifies that there's failure happening. I can't allow this to continue. So it opens the circuit breaker. Opening the circuit breaker means it recognizes there is some error and the circuit breaker opens up. And what does it do? It usually disconnects the circuit. That is why sometimes you'll see, suddenly you'll open the fridge and you'll see that fridge does not have the light. Then you'll see the MCB switch has tripped. Then you'll figure out what is wrong and you might do some kind of repairs and then you might flip on, right? So once the problem is resolved, you can manually close the circuit breaker by flipping on the switch, right? So essentially, if you look at this hardware miniature circuit breaker of our electric circuit, it has prevented the cascading failure. Because if the MCB switch did not realize this and did not disconnect the circuit, our entire household wiring or even the consumer durables might get burned down, isn't it? Yeah. Team, are you all with me? It has nothing to do with our software circuit breaker. I'm just giving you an example of a regular electric circuit breaker that we usually have, right? Same kind of funda holds good even in software, but with slight differences. So I am introducing you to one software circuit breaker product which was available from Netflix OSS. Please note, Netflix OSS product called Hystrix is the software circuit breaker. From Spring Boot version 2.4.m1 onwards, there's no support for Hystrix. But nevertheless, I'm giving you this intro so that in case you end up working in a project which is using an older version of Spring and they're still using Hystrix as their fault tolerance mechanism or circuit breaker mechanism, you know about it. Yeah? So Hystrix was, of course, is very much part of Netflix OSS. It's a very lightweight, easy to use wrapper is provided by Spring Cloud. So it's easy for us to use Hystrix. As we said, Hystrix, once you configure and enable it, Hystrix can watch a function. And whenever a request is coming to that function, it will keep watching to see whether the function is operating normally. Whenever it detects a failure condition, yeah, it opens itself and it will disallow further calls to come to it because it will keep watching. Once it fails, not a problem. Twice it fails, okay, may not be. But in a 10-second period, if some 100 requests or at least 50% requests are going for a toss, yeah, there's something wrong with it, right? So Hystrix opens itself and it will disallow further calls from coming in. So Hystrix as a default, which is time-based, within 5-second window, if there are 20 requests which are failing on that same method, so it identifies that there's some kind of failure and it will open itself and it will disallow further calls from coming in. Yeah. What you can do when you are configuring Hystrix is, beauty is you can even identify a fallback. So as the name itself suggests, a fallback is a fallback method. If the original method is failing and Hystrix has disallowed further calls to come to that method, you can have a fallback method so that the further calls will come to the fallback method. And in the fallback method, you can do something worthwhile. Okay, some default actions you can take in the fallback method. This is very similar to the try and catch block, but this is done on the individual method levels. Okay, and of course, once it opens up, every 5 seconds it will close itself. Again, it will check whether things are fine. If things are fine with the original method, it will close and it will allow calls to come in. But still, if the calls are failing, again it will open and it will disallow further calls from coming in. So all that can happen if you configure Hystrix. Yeah. So of course, Hystrix is not the only product. Of course, this is the product from Netflix OSS. Similar to Hystrix, you have other circuit breakers also. Aka, Envoy, Istio. These are other popular alternatives and competitors available for Hystrix. Yeah. So just comparing Hystrix, which is a software circuit breaker, with the physical circuit breaker. Most of the things are very common and same, but with few changes. For example, in a software circuit breaker, which is Hystrix, yeah, or we'll talk from physical circuit breaker, the MCB switch. The MCB switch is in closed state when everything is operating normally. See, when your electric circuit is operating normally, there's no need of this MCB to do anything. So it is in closed state. Hystrix also, when everything is operating normally, Hystrix circuit breaker also is in closed state. MCB switch state will become open when the failure is detected. Similarly, even in Hystrix also, the status of the circuit breaker will be open when a failure is detected. And for a MCB switch, failure definition is fixed, because if it is watching an electric circuit, the electric flow and maybe some kind of amp ratings, voltage ratings, etc., those might be the definitions to decide whether there is a failure or it is operating normally. But in Hystrix, the failure definition is flexible. You can decide. You can configure it. For example, should you consider one request failing as a failure? You can. Or do you want to consider that within a 5-second window, 50% of the requests are failing? Should that be the measure to consider something as a failure? That definition is flexible. Yeah, so you can decide. There are some default values, but in case you want to change those default values, that also you can do. Yeah, in a MCB switch, if it opens, there's no fallback. It trips. That's it. It disconnects the electric circuit. There's no fallback. But in software circuit breaker, there is a fallback option which can do something worthwhile. Yeah, and the circuit breaker in MCB, you have to flip on the switch manually when everything is normal. In Hystrix, automatically it will reclose itself once things are fine with the original method. Every 5 seconds it will keep again checking. If things are fine, again it will close itself. Yeah. So these are some of the differences between Hystrix and the hardware circuit breaker. Yeah. So what do you feel, guys? Do you think in production environments, especially when multiple microservices have dependencies amongst themselves, do you think it's a good idea to guard some functions or methods that are very important, and a failure to those methods could cause a cascading failure? Do you think guarding them with a software circuit breaker like Hystrix would really add value? Absolutely yes, is it? Yeah. So if you are convinced and you want to use Hystrix, these are some of the steps that we used to use when we worked with Hystrix. One is step number 1, add the dependency in pom.xml file. So you can see org spring framework.cloud and the artifact ID is spring cloud starter Hystrix. So you have to add the Hystrix dependency. This is step number 1. Step number 2 is, if you want to use Hystrix in your application, you will enable Hystrix in your app. So how do you do? Either in your configuration class or your main application class. you will add the appropriate annotation. Are you able to see any histories related annotation here, guys? Yes, right. So you can see that @enable histories. This is the annotation that you have to add. Yeah. Then once these two steps are done, third important step is go on to your application, your controller, service, wherever, whichever method you want to guard by using histories, you have to annotate those methods with the histories command annotation, and you can also provide a fallback mechanism. Yeah. So here is a kind of code snippet. Just go through it. I'm sure you can understand. Go through it, then we'll have a discussion. So in this example, can you tell me which is the original method that I'm guarding using histories command? Correct. Get stores, right? So get stores is the actual method. This is the original method. And right in front of this, you can see I have used @histories command. And in case something goes wrong with this get stores method and histories realizes that there are too many failures and it will stop the request coming to this, you can also specify a fallback method. So in this example, have you specified a fallback method? If the original method fails, yes. So in our case, default stores. So this is the default stores method where you can do some fallback activity. Yeah. And one point to remember, I'm sure it is logical, but I want you to know that the fallback method also should have the same signature, right? It should be able to take the same amount and type of arguments. Plus, it should also be able to provide the same kind of return type, isn't it? Yeah. So likewise, you can do. Yeah. So it's like this, for example, uh, who is a fallback? If I just take a real world example, assume I work for the talent transformation team, right? I am a trainer who typically trains on Java and cloud related uh, skills, right? Assume one day I'm unwell and I want my one of my training to be handled by somebody else. So who should be that somebody else? That somebody else also should have the same skill knowledge like mine, right? So that they can handle my trainings. Can a .NET SME or a .NET trainer be my fallback? Not really, right? So very similar to that. Please remember the fallback method should have the same signature like the original method. Yeah. So you can decide. Yeah. And guys, please note, I think I've made one point very clear. Just before explaining this, what did I do? I said, you have to identify which of the methods, a failure of which could cause a cascading failure. Those methods are good candidates to be guarded by your histories. Just because histories is there, is it a good idea that all the methods in all the microservice you'll start guarding, guys? Not really. Yeah. Think about it. Yeah. I want all of you to be very attentive, please. Apart from some silly things that I might talk, most of the things that I say is all important and all to the point. Yeah. Are you all with me, guys? These are the 3 steps we used to follow, guys. One, add the dependency for histories. Then use @enable histories on your main application class. Then whichever method you want to guard, yeah, you will use @histories command. Yeah, and do this. And of course, here you are just using @histories command annotation, and you are not changing any properties. That means you are intending to take the default histories property settings, right? But you can even change. For example, almost the same. Look at this. go through it and kind of take a guess. What am I trying to do here? It's still using @historics command itself. But like look at it and try to identify what am I trying to do here, please. Are you able to see that I am kind of changing the default properties of historics? Yeah, like for example here @historics command, fallback method anyway we had used earlier also. And if your intention is to change certain historics properties, you can use command properties, and you can use another annotation called @historics property. What is a historics property? Circuit breaker error threshold percentage, and I'm setting it to 20. Yeah. By default, the error threshold percentage is 50. That means if 50% failures occur in a 10-second period, only then the historics will open. But I am changing it to 20 because I want to be a little careful. I don't want to wait till 50% failures occur. Even if 20% failures occur during a 10-second period window, I want to open the circuit breaker. Yeah, so I can change it. Similarly, there's a property called circuit breaker sleep window in milliseconds. You know that in the previous one. Here, circuit breaker will automatically close itself. Default is 5 seconds, right? After 5 seconds, it will automatically close itself. And again, it will check whether your function is working fine. But if I want to be more aggressive, I can change my values. Okay, either increase it or decrease it. So here I'm decreasing it to 1 second. So right after 1 second, try closing the breaker and check whether the original method is working. Okay, you can decide. It's all left to you, and what type of application you are working with, what type of scenarios is your application working with, what kind of users you are working with. All that, based on that, you can change these values. Otherwise, the default historics values would be there. Guys, are you all with me? And as I told you earlier, historics also provides you a dashboard. Yeah? Of course, just by enabling historics, automatically the dashboard is not provided. There are some configurations that you have to do for it. But historics provides you a built-in dashboard. And this is one sample dashboard. And using the sample dashboard, you can check the status of your circuit breaker. So according to this example, I will anyway talk about this, the same slide. I'm going to talk about that next. I'll show you how you can read few things from here. Yeah. As I told you, yes, historics provides a built-in dashboard, but you have to enable it. Yeah. So I want you to look at how you can set the historics dashboard, please. Yeah. To set the historics dashboard, there are dependencies that you need to add. One is you need to add the dependency for Spring Cloud Starter historics dashboard. Yeah, this is a different dependency. Please note earlier, you had only added the dependency for historics. But historics dashboard is a different dependency. So you have to add this dependency for historics dashboard. And please remember, the historics dashboard will be able to collect the metrics and other details about your functions through a stream of data that would get generated from actuator. We all know that actuator module of Spring Boot provides the management endpoints through which a lot of data and the status about your apps can be collected, right? So please remember, the historics dashboard is dependent on the actuator so that it can collect the metrics data and other instrumentation data, and it can use it. Yeah. So just ensure that you have also added the actuator dependency. Yeah. So to work with historics dashboard, add appropriate historics dashboard and actuator dependency. That is step 1. Step 2. Apart from enable historics annotation, Now that you want to use the Hystrix dashboard, do you see any additional annotation here, please? Yes. So you can see here you have @enable Hystrix dashboard, right? @enable Hystrix dashboard, right? So this you need to add. So this is step 1, this is step 2. And once it is available, you can access your app. So you would have enabled all these things to your microservice, right? Now, once Hystrix is available, you can access the Hystrix dashboard by accessing your URL of your app, and you can access this endpoint called /Hystrix. So when you say /Hystrix, it will open up the Hystrix dashboard. Can you all see the Hystrix dashboard main opening page, please? Yeah, this is how it looks. And here you have to supply the URI or the stream URI to collect the information about this app and then show it in the dashboard. So the URL will be very similar to your URL of your microservice, but the endpoint is like /Hystrix.stream. Don't get confused. /Hystrix will show you this dashboard. But in this dashboard, what is your intention? You want to collect all the details of this particular app and about your circuit breaker, and that you want to show in the dashboard, right? So to access the event stream of the circuit breaker, you should use Hystrix.stream. Yeah. And here you can specify the delay. What will be the delay between two data updates, plus whatever title you want to see in the screen. One useful title you can put here. So if you don't put any useful title, what happens is it will just show the same stream name itself. But if you want to show a useful title here, you can put a useful title here. Yeah. So this is, and once you do this and you click on monitor, this is how you'll be able to monitor. This is how the Hystrix dashboard looks. Yeah. So here, what will it show? In your app, whichever methods you have annotated with @Hystrix command, yeah, those details it will show. So in my example, there are two methods that are being guarded with the Hystrix command. One is the getWord method, and the other one is called as getSentence method. Now look at the getSentence method. What is the status of the circuit breaker? Can you look at this? I know it is a little blurry, but can you just read this and tell me what is the status of this getSentence method? Open. Yeah. Open status means what? When is the circuit breaker status opened? Correct. When there is a failure, right? So when there is a failure on this method, the status becomes open. So there is a worry. You might have to look at the status has become open. So why is it become open? Other things you have to check and rectify it. But do you have to worry about getWord? Look at the status and tell me. No, right? Because the status is closed. So status closed means when everything is operating normally, status will be closed, isn't it? Yeah. So that is how you can make. Team, are you all with me, please? Yeah. Of course, there are many other options that you can use, like you can sort in terms of error volumes, then in alphabetical order. If you have many annotated methods, okay, you can find out the median, mean, and all that. Okay, you can see all those coming up here. Yeah. This is how the dashboard looks. Team, are you all with me? Yep. Yes. But as I told you, we cannot work with Hystrix now because Hystrix is no more supported in Spring Boot version 2.4.m1 onwards. So the suggested alternative to the Spring Cloud Netflix Hystrix is the Spring Cloud Circuit Breaker with Resiliency 4G. Yeah. So Actually, it is resilience 4G. Okay, 1 minute, guys. Let me correct it now itself. Resilience 4G. So obviously, it is available if you are creating an app from scratch. You can choose Resilience 4J. As you can see, Resilience 4J is a Spring Cloud circuit breaker. Okay, and of course, if you already have a microservice and now you want to add the dependency for Resilience 4J, that also can be added. So this is the artifact ID. Spring Cloud Starter Circuit Breaker hyphen Resilience 4J. So this is the artifact ID. Yeah. So this is step number 1. If you want to add Resilience 4J as your circuit breaker, add this. Once you add this, unlike Hystrix where majority of it was done through annotation based, the idea remains the same, but when you work with Resilience 4J, the way it is implemented is a little different. Yeah. So I want you to look at this code in whichever in your controller and in your service, whichever method you are working. Okay. There you can write this code. Okay. I will just mark it with kind of markers. This is the first part for you to look at. This is one part that you can look at. And this is another part you can look at. I want you to spend a minute. Just go through the code. Then we'll have a discussion. Go through the code, please. So I want you to look at the topmost code. Are you able to realize that if you want to use circuit breaker facility to guard your methods, first you have to auto wire for an object of type circuit breaker factory. So you are creating or auto wiring for an object of type circuit breaker factory. Are you all fine with this, guys? Yes. Now, just to kind of take an example, in our application where Cafe Info is talking to Cafe Review, and to be very precise, Cafe Info is talking to through the get all method. The get all method is talking to get review method by a particular ID, isn't it? By a particular cafe ID. And from there it used to get the data, isn't it? Yeah. But just to simulate a failure, in my case, it is a very simple app. It's very difficult for me to simulate a failure. Just to show you how a failure might occur and how circuit breaker might work, look at this example. What I'm doing is our existing get review method, I'm changing it a little. Earlier, what we used to do, we used to just call the repository method called find all by cafe ID and we used to get it. That was easy. But now just to simulate a failure, what I'm doing is I'm creating a REST template object. Then I am trying to work with the external REST API. So you can see here that I'm creating a string URL and this is the URL I'm using. This is a publicly available URL. Fortunately for my case, at present it does not work. Yeah, this used to work earlier. Zomato used to provide a publicly available API. Using this publicly available API, I could get reviews of top 5 restaurants in a particular city. Top 5 restaurants as per reviews in a particular city. But fortunately for me, because I have to anyway show that it does not work, right? This URL does not work. Yeah. But anyway, this is the URL. And look at what I'm doing. Assume that in the get review method, it is going to access this URL. And when it accesses this URL, if the results come, obviously the results will be returned. But in case there is some error, I want the circuit breaker to manage that error. So how to do that? First and foremost, once you get the circuit breaker factory, look at what I do. Using this circuit breaker factory object, I call the create method and I create a circuit breaker. So when you're creating a circuit breaker, you can give a name to your circuit breaker. So this is just a string. I'm giving a name to my circuit breaker. Giving a name to your circuit breaker is useful because after you set up your circuit breaker, if you are setting up some kind of dashboard or monitoring facility, you'll be able to monitor this particular circuit breaker using this name. So I'm just creating a circuit breaker and I give a name. So you can see what is it creating. It is creating a circuit breaker object. So the circuit breaker factory, the create method will create a circuit breaker and that is what it will return. Yeah. Now I have a circuit breaker object. Now look at this. Using the circuit breaker object, I call the method called run. And here I am actually making my call. So how am I making my call here? First is using the REST template, which is this. I am making a call get for object and I'm passing my URL, which is this Zomato URL. And whatever is the result, I want it as list.class. So if everything goes on fine, this is what gets returned. But look at the second argument, please. The second argument is important for us. Yeah. In the second argument, what is the meaning of the second argument, guys? I'm sure it is guessable. Can you tell me? Correct. See, I am using the circuit breaker and I'm saying run this particular method or do this particular activity. If the activity is successful, you continue. But if that activity, whatever you're trying, if it through some exception, you get the output as a throwable object, you get a throwable object, then you should call the default method. So in my case, get default reviews is the default method. Yeah. So this is the get default reviews method, which is acting as a fallback mechanism. And can you look at the code here and tell me what is it doing? The fallback method should do something worthwhile, right? What is it doing? Correct. It is returning some dummy default reviews, some hard-coded reviews. It is returning. Can you all see this, guys? So I'm just creating a list of reviews and I'm creating some new review objects and that is what we are returning. Team, are you all with me? Yeah. So to implement the Spring Cloud circuit breaker, first add the dependency of resilience 4J. Then in your service class or in your controller class, whichever method you want to or whichever call you want to guard by circuit breaker, this is how you work with it. Yeah, and you also specify a fallback. And again, this is not needed, but just by looking at this, can you, what I've done here is I've created a separate configuration class and I'm calling it as resilience 4J configuration. By looking at this class name itself, I'm sure you can guess what am I trying to do. Roughly, can you look at this and tell me what am I trying to do here, please? Correct. I'm changing my configurations. Maybe some default configurations, whatever was there, I want to change it according to my need. So what I can do here is I can create a circuit breaker configuration object. And here you can see the failure threshold percentage is by default anyway 50. I'm retaining it as 50 only. Wait duration in open state. Yeah. When it is in the circuit breaker is in open state, before it closes itself, okay, by default it is 5 seconds, right? But if you want to change it, maybe I want to change it to 1 second, I can do this. Yeah. Sliding window size for any calculation, usually I will use 10 seconds, but here I'm changing it to 2 seconds. So any properties I can create it and build. See, any configuration has two parts. One is certain properties are regular circuit breaker properties. There are certain properties which are based on time. Yeah, time limiter configuration. For example, when should your circuit breaker time out? For example, assume it is calling something or it is trying to do something. When should it take that as a failure? When timeout happens, right? But what is the timeout period? The timeout duration, I'm setting it to 4 seconds. That means what? Whatever activity it is doing. So in our case, it is calling some URL, external URL. Within 4 seconds, if the response does not come, it is treated as a timeout. So all these configurations I can build. So here, broadly, I'm creating two configuration objects. One is the circuit breaker config object, then the time limiter config object. So now in my circuit breaker factory, I will add both this time limiter config and circuit breaker config, and I can build it. Yeah. Nobody is asking you to change it because usually the default settings are more than enough. They are designed as default setting based on production environments. Yeah. But anyway, there is an option for you to change if you require. Team, are you all with me, please? And once all these things is ready, we can set up the monitoring. Okay, but I will talk about monitoring later. One point I want you to look at it here. Please remember, once you have set up your circuit breaker, and if you have added actuator in your app and you have exposed the relevant endpoints, assume you have exposed all the endpoints, circuit breaker, when you add these, also will generate some specific endpoints. So using these endpoints, you can see, okay, you can see how things work, what is the status of your circuit breaker, all that you will be able to check using those actuator endpoints itself. Team, are you all with me? So what we will do is, we will look at the same code I have used. Okay, we will look at the same thing in our code and we will see how things work. Okay, then once we feel things are working fine, then I will come back and show you how to kind of set up your monitoring using other monitoring tools. Because unlike Histrix, which provided an inbuilt dashboard called Histrix dashboard, Resilience 4J does not have its own dashboarding option. So you should be dependent on other tools, other external tools for setting up dashboard and monitoring. Yeah, we will look at that as our next discussion. But before I talk about this, let's go to our code. Yeah. In our code, your Eureka server remains the same, guys. So let me run this. Absolutely no change here. So let it run. Let us not wait for it. Meanwhile, in our example, all of you are aware, right? There are two microservices, Cafe Info and Cafe Review. Cafe Info has a method called getAll method. And within the getAll method, it is trying to, because it has to get the review details also, it is talking to another microservice. And in that another microservice, which is Cafe Review, it is calling a method called getReview, isn't it? So if getReview, assuming that getReview method fails, there will be a cascading failure because getCafe functionality of getAll also will fail, isn't it? Yeah. So if this is the scenario, okay, if this is the scenario, which method has to be guarded? Yeah. Just to tell about the details again, I'll give you a Cafe Info is one microservice, right? Here you have the getAll method, right? Now here you have Cafe Review microservice. In Cafe Review microservice, we have the getReview method, which is taking a Cafe ID, right? Cafe Review method, which is taking a Cafe ID, right? Now, this is the method. And in this method, in the getAll method, I am making a call to getReview method, okay, of the Cafe Review. And if this will hit this, right? If this method fails, obviously there is a failure in this method because half of the part of the data is not available, isn't it? Yeah. So in this example, which is the method that has to be guarded, guys, by circuit breaker? Which is the method? Get review method. Get review method. Yeah, the called methods have to be guarded. Yeah. So get review method has to be guarded, and this get review method is part of which one? The cafe review. Yeah. So just to simulate a failure, I'm just changing the code in the get review. Okay. So let's look at this, and all our resilience 4J dependency, all that should be added in our cafe review, isn't it? Yeah. So let's look at this. So this is my cafe review project. Please note, this is the third version of my projects. And in this third version and the last version, I have included the resilience 4J related details. Yeah. So let's look at the cafe review 3 project. Let's look at the pom.xml, please, all of you. We will have to just recheck whether I have dependency that I've added for resilience 4J, right? So let's look at it. I also want you to look at this. Have we added the actuator, please? Yes, actuator will be useful because, as we said, it will add additional actuator endpoints for resilience 4J, right? So I have actuator also. Plus, apart from all these, are you all comfortable with line number 39 to 42? 39 to 42, please, all of you. Yes. Yeah, this is the important dependency. Spring Cloud Starter, Circuit Breaker, Resilience 4G. Okay, so this is what I've added. Yeah. And before I show you the actual service method where we have created the circuit breaker factory and we have created the circuit breaker, etc. By default, when you enable the actuator dependency, what is the only endpoint that is exposed, guys? Correct. Health is the only endpoint that is exposed by default. But if you want the capability to be able to see even resilience 4J kind of endpoints, etc., you have to expose them, right? So what we'll do is we'll go to the application.yml. And in application.yml, everything else is the same. I'll show you the last part. Are you all comfortable from line number 36 to 40? Same thing. In application.properties, you use one lengthy property, right? Management.endpoints.web.exposure.include, and you had set it to star. Same thing in YML, it will look like this. Yeah. And one more thing I've done is health usually will show only one status, right? Up or down, right? Like that it will show. But if you want to show more details, there are more details that it can show about health. So what I've done is health, under health, show details, I've set it to always. So always show more details for health if somebody accesses it. Yeah. So this is what I have done here. Okay. And going back, so you have added the dependency for resilience 4J. This is also updated. Plus now let's look at our code. So same thing what I showed you in the slide. In fact, from here only I have copied to the slide. Let's look at the code in the slide, please, all of you. Yeah. So what earlier we were doing is, if you recollect, in the get review method, earlier what I was doing, I used to call the repository and I used to call this method called find all by cafe ID, and I used to pass the cafe ID. This used to return the list of all the cafe reviews. That is what I was returning, right? These were the only 2 lines that I was using earlier. Guys, you all remember? Yeah. Now, just to simulate our circuit breaker code, look at whatever I'm doing. Same thing, whatever we discussed in our slide, guys. Are you all comfortable from line number 39 to line number 50, please? 39 to 50. Go through it again and then confirm. Same thing, right? So here you are using REST template. Of course, you can use even OpenFin and all, but just to keep it simple, I just use REST template. Then this is the URL, which I know it's not working. Anyway, it will generate error. For example, let me show you. And I try to directly access it. You can see that you are getting a 504 error. Yeah. So no logic related change is required. Here I'm just simulating a failure. See, because I'm calling a common method, general method here, this will not fail anytime. It will never fail. So I'm not able to show you a failure. Just to show you a failure, I'm doing something which fails. Okay. No need to change your code. Your code will remain the same. But just to simulate a failure, I'm doing this. And so as you see, this will fail. And this is my default fallback method, right? And this is the fallback method. And you can see in the fallback method, I have some default sample reviews that I'm manually populating, and that is what I'm returning. So good vegan cafe, limited choice, great ambience, all these are part of this get review details. Yeah. Team, are you all with me? So that's it. We are almost ready. These are the only two things you have to do, and let's run it. Okay. So I will go back to my application and I will run it. Anyway, it is designed to run on an available random port. Yeah. Meanwhile, I can even directly call get reviews. It's not that I have to call from cafe info, because anyway I can call this also directly, but not a problem. I can even call it from cafe info. So let's anyway your Eureka server was up, so let me access that. So Eureka server is there. And let's see. Review. Yeah, it's almost starting. Okay, should have started by now. There it is. Can you all see cafe review up guys? And absolutely no change in cafe info. So I'm just going to start it as it is. No change required here. Of course, in production environment, if this also had some methods that had to be guarded with circuit breaker, same steps you will do for this also. Just wait for this also to complete startup. Almost ready. So we'll come back to this. It's almost ready. There it is. Okay. So now let me access this just to give you a feel. I will first create one cafe entry. So I'm giving a cafe entry called Grand, and I'm saying it is a 5-star cafe. Okay, I'll click on submit. So this is the cafe detail. One cafe is there, right? Now let me try to add some reviews. So reviews at present, there's no info about it. So for the cafe ID 1, I'm giving a rating. I'll say 5. I'll say fabulous. Okay. So there is one review, right? So if I say get reviews for that, it gives me one review. Ideally, it should ideally give me one review. Yeah. Now what we will do is we will access the get all method. And in get all method, I want you to, I'm passing cafe ID 1. Any guesses according to what changes I have done? What should happen now? Get all method should be able to show the cafe detail, but what about the review details? Will it be able to pick up the review details? No, right? Because in the review detail, I've made the change as though I'm talking to another URL to get the data, but we know that another URL is failing in our case. Yeah. So when I try to hit this, yeah, there it is. You get the cafe ID details, all these details. But look at the review and ratings details, guys. Where is it coming from? Correct. The default fallback method, isn't it? This is what is coming from the default fallback method, right? And as I told you, in this, this is the reviews, right? In the reviews, if you go to actuator endpoint, look at the thing, guys. Do you see any circuit breaker related endpoints here, which you're seeing it for the first time? Yes, right? So you can see. You will be able to see the circuit breaker. Here it will give you the circuit breakers, all circuit breakers. You can even check the circuit breakers with the name. You can also check the circuit breaker events, and there are few endpoints that are there here. Yeah. For example, if I access this, so it's just giving me the name of that circuit breaker. Yeah. Similarly, if I want to know the circuit breaker related events that have occurred, this is how it will show. Yeah. Try to make some sense out of it, guys. It might not have all the data, but can you look at this and tell me what do you get to know from this? There seems to be an error. And yes, there is a failure. So there's an error message which has got caused due to some kind of timeout. And the duration in milliseconds that it has taken. And then state transition is null, because at present, state transition, it is not changed from the state. If the status is opened, if the status of the circuit breaker is opened, then you can see that there is no transition. Transition will be none. So as and when we keep hitting this over and over again, okay, in our case, as soon as the first one failed itself, it opened up the circuit breaker, right? So you can see that, and here you'll be able to see the rough details. Yeah. See, now again, I accessed it many times, right? So every time it is failing, and you can see what has happened. Yeah. Initially, there was a timeout because there was too much of time. But later you can see it is actually hitting the API Zomato URL. But due to the security validator, there is a path building exception that has occurred. SSL handshake error has occurred. Due to that, there is a failure. Are you all with me, guys? Yeah. So this is how it gives me the state of it. Again, it is not very intuitive, because it would be nice if we can see the status of all these things in a dashboard. That makes more sense, right? And I also want you to look at one more thing. Here, even the health also, sorry, actuator/health, right? Yeah. Though I have said always, yeah, you can see that at present there's only this regular status that it is showing. Yeah. So this is more than enough. But again, depending on certain endpoints, it might start showing you more details about a particular app. Yeah. Again, going back here, you can see all these endpoints. So by using one of these endpoints, you'll be able to see. And did you realize it is showing me the circuit breaker name here? Remember, when we created a circuit breaker, we gave a name. That's the name that's coming up here. Yeah. So it's easy to make out which one is failing. Especially it is useful if you have multiple circuit breakers. Yeah. Team, are you all with me? Okay. Again, please note, when will the circuit breaker status be closed in our example? In our example, at present, it is open and it is never going to close because my URL is not working, right? When will it work? When will it go to a close state? Correct. When everything becomes normal. So assuming that that URL works normally, yeah, and it is able to get the data, only then it will work. The status will change from open to closed. Team, are you all with me, please? So please note, we have just completed only the first part of our discussions, and I've also shown you the code. In the second part of the discussion, we will be working with Prometheus. Yeah, but Prometheus related dependencies and steps I had already applied in the app. So I may not need to stop and restart my apps. I will leave those apps as it is, but we will come back, we'll take a break. Once we come back from the break, if you want to set up a monitoring option, we will be using an external tool called Prometheus. So I will talk about Prometheus and what are some of the steps that are involved. If you wanted to use Prometheus, we will talk about that. And then I will show you how I've implemented in my code. Is that okay, guys? Okay, so we'll take a break now. This is a logical time. When we come back, I'll continue from here. Okay, take a break and come back, please. Let's continue. Before the break, we have already completed our discussions on the Netflix OSS option of Hystrix, and we have also started our discussions on the alternative to it, which is Spring Cloud circuit breaker with Resilience 4J. And in terms of setting up Resilience 4J related circuit breaker, we have also discussed about the dependency that is required and how you can use the circuit breaker factory to create a circuit breaker, and then using the run method, how you can run the actual call, and in case something goes wrong, you can even specify a fallback. And since we had also enabled the actuator provides you certain circuit breaker endpoints that can be further used to get to know the details of or the status of your the status of your circuit breakers, right? But looking at just the actuator endpoints might not provide you a very good view of the status. So here is where you might want to look at it using a monitoring tool or a dashboarding tool like Prometheus. I think we spoke about this earlier. Hystrix was supporting its own dashboard, but Resilience 4J does not provide its own dashboard. So you can use your own monitoring option. Yeah, and we also know that Hystrix dashboard is no more supported in Spring Boot 2.4 onwards. So hence, you can use any other monitoring or orchestrating tool for your monitoring purpose. So the recommended tool with the Spring Boot is Prometheus. You can use Prometheus as your monitoring option, or very similar to Prometheus, you can use any other tool. For example, New Relic is again a very similar tool, very similar to Prometheus. You can use New Relic. Grafana also might not be directly supported through a starter module, but you could even use Grafana if required. Yeah. So during our training, we will be using, or I will be showing you a demo using the Prometheus monitoring option. Yeah. So to use Prometheus, first and foremost thing is, of course, before I have specified here, you need to ensure that your Prometheus software is available on your machine. So Prometheus is a different software. Even at Wipro, it's not a standard software. Please raise a software requisition through My Wipro. And Prometheus is available as a community version. So provide the URL of Prometheus. Just Google for Prometheus download for your appropriate operating system. You'll get a URL. Provide that to the software acquisition team. They will help you download it. Because I also followed the same steps and got Prometheus installed on my machine. Yeah. So just first get Prometheus installed on your machine. Now, to use Prometheus in your microservices as the monitoring option, you will have to add the corresponding dependencies and follow certain steps. So broadly, these are the steps that we will follow. First, we will have to add the Prometheus dependency. I have sliders for each of these steps, don't worry. But this is the broader discussion of the steps that you will follow. We will add the Prometheus dependency in your microservice. Prometheus also requires the actuator dependency so that the actuator dependency can help Prometheus to collect metrics to ensure that you have added the actuator dependency also, and you have also exposed all the endpoints. This we have already taken care. Then third step is, above step will add additional circuit breaker and Prometheus endpoints also under your actuator base path. And the circuit breaker actuator endpoints can be directly used to review the circuit breaker details and status. And the Prometheus endpoint could be supplied to your Prometheus software. So assuming that you have your Prometheus software installed on your machine, the actuator endpoint of Prometheus you can supply to your Prometheus software through its configuration file. I'll show you all these things, don't worry. So Prometheus software, once you install, it will provide you one YML file, which is used for configuration. You can go into the YML file and provide the details of which is the port on which you want the Prometheus dashboard to run, and from which endpoint should it start collecting the data. All that information you can provide in the prometheus.yml. And finally, you can use the dashboard to see it. Okay. So how to provide or how to perform all these steps? Look at this. Step number 1. This is how you can add the Prometheus dependency. Yeah. So you can see Prometheus is from, it's not from Spring Boot, not from Spring Cloud. It's a separate monitoring tool. So you can see that the group ID is IO micrometer and artifact ID is micrometer-registry-Prometheus. So this is the artifact ID. Yeah. And of course, you can just go to start.spring.io. Here, when you click on it, you will get Prometheus. You can see here. See, Prometheus is for observability. It exposes micrometer metrics in the Prometheus format, which is an in-memory dimensional time series database with a simple built-in UI. And there are various other options available. So Prometheus itself is a separate instrumentation tool. So that detailing of Prometheus might not be possible during our training. Yeah, I'm just showing you how you can use Prometheus to monitor the status of our circuit breaker. Yeah, so either you can use Prometheus dashboard option, or you also have inbuilt support for New Relic. See, New Relic also is an observable option. You can use this to publish micrometer metrics to New Relic, which is a SaaS offering, very similar to others. Yeah, you can even use this. Yeah. So if you use Prometheus, this is the dependency that it will add. Yeah. So this is step one. And step two is because Prometheus is dependent on actuator to collect the metrics, ensure that you have the actuator dependency added to. And of course, so you have added the actuator dependency, and your application.yml file, you have exposed all the endpoints, because otherwise you will only see the default endpoint called health, right? That will not be useful. Yeah. And if you want to show more details, whenever there are more details about something, if you want to see more details, you can set it. And the third is you can see once everything's done, if you once your app is up and running, if you access the base URL called actuator, here you can see there are a lot of circuit breaker related endpoints that are there. We use few of them to see the details. Plus, can you all see here? Now that you have added Prometheus dependency also, you will also see a Prometheus endpoint. This is the Prometheus endpoint that you will see. Yeah. Now what you can do is, of course, I've already shown you. If you access one of these circuit breaker endpoints, you'll be able to see the details of it. This will show you only the circuit breaker names. And you will be able to see the circuit breaker events, very similar to this. Yeah. For example, if everything was success, if a circuit breaker was success, okay, you can see that the type will show as success, so no problem. But if some failures have occurred, you can see that it's an error and the reason why it has failed. Yeah, very similar to in our case. And so as we said, once Prometheus software is installed on your machine, the Prometheus actuator endpoint could be supplied to the Prometheus software through its configuration YML file. So which is the prometheus.yml file. And so once you supply that, this could stream the events and instrumentation data into the Prometheus dashboard for visualization. So what I've done is in the notes section, I have added one YouTube video link. That YouTube video link gives you the steps that you should follow. Okay. So if at all you are getting stuck, you can follow that YouTube link, and the person who is sharing sharing his knowledge on this explains clearly how you should be doing that. Okay. So in case you are stuck anywhere, you can watch that YouTube video. Yeah? And I'll show you this, don't worry. And after configuring your Prometheus YML file with the required details, you can run the Prometheus exe from the installation directory. So it will start listening on the Prometheus. It will start running. It will start listening on the port that you have configured. And in my case, assuming that I've configured Prometheus dashboard to run on port 9090, this is how the UI of Prometheus will look. Now, here, what you can do is you can access the Prometheus tool by accessing the main URL. And here you can query for any metric. There are many metrics that you can use. You can type in you start typing in your metric. Assume you want to look at resilience for the circuit breaker state. You can even, if you don't want to type, you can even use this globe icon. When you click on globe icon, it will show you a list of all the available metrics. You can choose a particular metric. So here I've chosen a metric called resilience for the circuit breaker state. And here I can click on execute. So here it will show you for each of your circuit breaker, what is the instance, what is the job, blah, 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 and what is the state at present. So all that it will show. Okay. Guys, are you all with me, please? So before we summarize, one more thing I wanted to share with you is, give me a minute. If you want to know more about resilience 4J and what are some of the configurable properties and what are their default values, etc., this is a good learning URL. So I will share that in the chat window. And guys, still now, based on our working, if I ask you a question, yeah, what are the different states in which your circuit breakers can be in? What will be your answer? If I just tell what are the different states your circuit breakers can be in? What will be your answer at present based on whatever we have understood? Correct. Two states, right? Open and closed, right? But actually speaking, you know what? There is also one intermediate state that comes in called as half open. So you can see here, circuit breaker is implemented by a finite state machine with three normal states: closed, open. We all know when it is closed, when it is open. And there's also something called half open. Okay, there is half open also. For example, assume it is open. That means some failure has occurred. Yeah, and it is open. But after a time period, it will try to open itself and test whether that original method is working fine or not, right? If it is working fine, then it will go to closed state. But if it is still not working, it has to go back to the open state, right? That intermediate state is called as half open. Yeah, half open state. So you can see here. And there are other two special states also. Disabled state, if you have disabled it. Yeah. Forced open, there are methods available where you can force open something based on certain criteria. But broadly, these are the three states: closed, open, and half open. Yeah. And this is a good article, you know. If you just scroll down, he talks about various properties. What is count-based sliding window? What is time-based sliding window? Okay. What are some of the failure rate and thresholds that are there? Yeah. For example, here, it's a very good article. Whenever you have time, you can go through it. Here he talks about different properties, yeah, and how you can use. For example, here, as I told you, see, failure rate threshold is 50%. So within the time window, if 50% failures occur, then the circuit breaker will open. So these are some default values. There's also something called permitted number of calls in a half open state. So if it is in half open state, should it permit some calls to happen on the original method so that I can find out whether it is failing or it is success? Default value is 10. Yeah. So permitted number of calls in half open state, default is 10. Of course, you can change it to any value you require. Yeah. So there are many such properties that are there here, guys. So whenever you want, you can go through it as an additional reading material. Yeah. Now, coming back to our discussion. So we have discussed about the steps that you can follow to set up Prometheus. What I'm going to do now is we'll just look at our code. As I told you, I have already configured Prometheus here for your app. But before we come to our app, let me show you where my Prometheus software has been installed. Okay. Many times forget where it is. Okay, 1 minute. Software Prometheus. Yes, this is the Prometheus software. Yeah. So I have this, I got it from Wipro only. So I had raised a software acquisition telling I need this Prometheus for my training. And I got this Prometheus. I'm using Prometheus 2.28. You can use any latest version. So once you get the zip file, you unzip it. Okay, you can see here that in the installation folder, you'll have all these. The exe will be used to start Prometheus. And here is the configuration file. Can you all see this prometheus.yml, guys? And I will open this Prometheus YML. Again, there are too many things here, but don't bother. Prometheus is a different discussion altogether because it's a full-fledged instrumentation and dashboarding tool. Yeah. So don't worry about this. But here we must make some changes. Okay. What are some changes you have to do? Go to the end of it. Okay. Go to the end. I will, if you want, I can share one sample Prometheus YML file with you guys. Okay. Anyway, in the notes page, I have suggested one YouTube video. Just go through that. Okay. That should be enough. But I want you to just look at this. The last section is where I have to make some changes. So under static configs, under the targets, we have to supply where should this Prometheus dashboard run. So according to my example, look at line number 29. My Prometheus software and the dashboard will launch on which port number, or will start working and listening on which port number? 9090. So this is the port number on which my Prometheus dashboard will run. Yeah. And under that, you will have to specify the job name. In the job name, you can give any name to it. So I'm just giving the job name as Spring Resilience 4J. And under metrics underscore path, here I will give the path of the Prometheus endpoint, which is going to supply the URL. So where do we get this from? If you go here, so this is my review, right? Review, you can see here, all of you. Can you all see this Prometheus endpoint? Yeah. So in this Prometheus endpoint, this URL you have to pass, but you will have to pass it in parts. I'll tell you how to do that. Yeah. So assume that this is my actuator endpoint of Prometheus. So you can see here, in my case, this is this. So you can see here in my YML file. Yeah, in my YML file. In my YML file, here in the metrics underscore path, I give only the last two things, slash actuator slash Prometheus. Can you all see that? According to my notepad, the last endpoint metrics path is where exactly the stream of data is being sent to me, which is actuator slash Prometheus. That is what I'm putting here. And scrape interval, I can specify what is the interval of refreshing your data and getting rid of unwanted data. And in the last section, I need to specify the targets. Target means which is my microservice from which I need to collect this Prometheus related event data. So in my case, I will specify localhost because it's anyway running on my localhost. And here I need to give my correct port. So in my case, which is the correct port on which my Prometheus is running, guys? Look at that notepad and tell me. This is a URL on which my cafe review is running, right? So I'll say 60831. Okay, that is what it's running. This is a YML file. Please be a little careful whenever you are entering the data. There are a lot of online tools that are available to check whether your YML is structurally correct or not. If you are still getting some error saying YML not correct, etc., copy this YML part into the online editors and check whether it is fine. And once everything is fine, you should be able to start your Prometheus. Yeah. So this is the change that you have to do. So one is you will specify the port on which your Prometheus should run. This is a job name that you can give. And metrics path is actuator slash Prometheus. And this is the port of my cafe review where it is running. Yeah. Yes, I will share one sample YML file. This sample YML file, I'll share it with you. Don't worry. So once everything is ready, you can start your Prometheus. Okay. So in my case, this is the Prometheus thing, right? Once you have updated your YML correctly, this is the exe that you will use to start. Okay. So let me be ready. I will just go to my command prompt and let me be here. Can you all see that I'm sitting in my Prometheus installation directory? Of course, you can add it under the path also. Okay. In my case, I have not added it under the path. So I need to be in the current directory where that exe is. And here you can run the exe. Yeah. But before doing that, let's look at our app. Okay. See here, pom.xml. In the pom.xml, you should ensure that you have the Prometheus dependency, right? Have a look at this, please. You already had circuit breaker dependency. You also had actuator. Plus, are you all comfortable from line number 44 to line number 48, all of you? Yes, right. Step 1 and step 2 is completed. I've already shown you the application.yml. In application.yml, I have included all the management endpoints. So that also is taken care, right? And now you all know that you can see your circuit breaker endpoints, and you also have this Prometheus. This Prometheus details you have updated in the prometheus.yml. So it will be able to pick up the details from here, okay? And it will be able to show you in the dashboard, yeah? So I've already shown you how you can update your Prometheus YML. This is how it will look. Yeah? So this is where your microservice is running. Yeah? This one, see, 60831. And what is the Prometheus endpoint? Actuator/Prometheus. So that is what you will give here. Yeah. That's it. You're almost ready. Now what I'm going to do is, anyway, I'm here, I will run Prometheus exe. Yeah. So Prometheus exe should ideally start your Prometheus software on your machine. So let's wait. At this juncture, if there is something wrong in your YML file, structure-wise or whatever, it will give you the error. And it will say YML not correct, whatever, and it will come out. So that's how you know that it's not working fine. So in our case, you can see till now, it's okay. And just wait for it to complete its startup. Yeah. So you can see here, server is ready to receive web requests. So you can see this message. And whenever you have time, you can go through it. You can see Prometheus, this is the version. And it's starting. Started. It's ready to receive your web requests, right? Now, once this is there, don't close it off, just minimize it. Now, what I'll do is I'll just go to the browser. And in the browser, I will access localhost 9090. Yeah? Because according to my Prometheus YML configuration, I am wanting the Prometheus dashboard to be available on 9090, right? So you can see that it opens up. And this is how the UI looks. Are you all with me, guys? And as I told you here, in this, you can directly start typing. For example, the moment you start typing, it will show you a drop down of all the metrics that is available. For example, I want to see the resilience for the circuit breaker state. So I'll just click on resilience for the circuit breaker state. Yeah. And here I'll click on execute. Now, when I click on execute, you can see here. This is the state for get review circuit breaker. So initially it was in closed state. Then when I accessed it initially, before going to the open, it went into, you can see here, it went into disabled, forced open, then half open. Then when more requests came in and all of them are failure, you can see that finally it has become open state here. Team, are you all with me? So this is how you can see what is the open state. And again, if you are not wanting to type here, you can even click on this globe. When you click on this globe, you can see it will show you a metrics explorer where all the metrics that you can explore is available. Yeah, as far as your Prometheus configuration goes. So you can see that here you can just search for your resilience related. Yeah, I have checked circuit breaker state. There are a lot of other things that you can check. Yeah, what are some of your buffered calls? What is a call count? What is a call second max? There are many properties that are available. Yeah, but for us, more what makes sense is this circuit breaker state. Team, are you all with me? So please remember, you have to get this Prometheus software. If you're trying to set this up on your official machine, you have to go through helpline.wipro.com, raise a software acquisition through MyWipro, and then you can get this. Of course, if you're trying on your personal laptops, it's available as an open source thing. Okay, just search for Prometheus software. Okay, download. So I have 2.28 version. So here, if you just go to the Prometheus official website and download, you will be able to get the details there. You can pass on this URL to the to your support team, and you tell them which exact Prometheus version you will require, and then from here you can download and install. Unzip it, and once you unzip it, for me, for example, whichever is my operating system, based on that I can get this, download, unzip it, and I can start using it. But please note, you cannot download and install any software of your choice. Please raise appropriate requests and then use it on your official laptop. So that's what we have done till now, guys. And of course, now that I am monitoring, now if I'm accessing my methods, for example, I am accessing my method again. Anyway, my method will still keep failing. Yeah. Because that URL is still not working. But as and when, assume that URL had a temporary issue. Okay, assume it had a temporary issue, and after some time it starts working fine. Then what will be the status of your circuit breaker, guys? When everything is fine, correct, it will be in closed state. But from when open to come to closed, in between it would have come to half open, right? Remember that. So that's it. That's the module. And just to summarize this chapter, we looked at how software circuit breakers, very similar to a hardware circuit breaker, can help us protect against cascading failure in our software. I talked about the Spring Cloud Netflix and the important Hystrix annotations that you can use. And we also looked at, in case you want to use Hystrix monitoring with the dashboard, how you can do that. And unfortunately, Hystrix is no more supported in Spring Boot 2.4 onwards. So alternative was Spring Cloud circuit breaker using Resilience 4J. And I just showed you how you can configure it and how you can guard your methods using the circuit breaker, and how you can use the actuator endpoints to see the details about the circuit breaker. And if you want to use a monitoring option, because Resilience 4J does not provide any inbuilt dashboard option, you can use any third-party products as your dashboarding option. So suggested is to use Prometheus. That is the demonstration that I've shown. Okay, but you need to install the Prometheus software on your machine so that you will be able to configure it to pull the streaming metrics from your Prometheus endpoint for your microservice. And then you can run your dashboard and have a look at it. Look at the various status of your Resilience 4J circuit breaker states. Team, are you all with me? So before I forget, let's move on to the quiz, please. Yeah, because I have some questions that I have jotted down even for this that will help you to kind of take up the quick assessment and clear it easily. So here are some questions. You can start with question number 0. Which Netflix OSS product is a fault-tolerant circuit breaker? Correct. Hystrix. Right? Question 1. Which product is an alternative to Hystrix and can be used in the latest versions of Spring Boot plus Cloud as a fault-tolerant circuit breaker? Right. Resilience 4G. Right? Perfect. That's the correct answer. Question number 2. What are the different states in which your circuit breaker can be in? Broadly, you can tell. Open, half open, closed. Okay. Open, half open, closed. Then third question. When everything is operating normally, the state of the circuit breaker is open. True or false? False. It's the opposite, right? When everything is operating normally, the state of the circuit breaker is closed. It's not doing anything. Yeah. Question number 4. What are some of the options for dashboard with Resilience 4J? At least 2 can you mention, which I mentioned? One is Prometheus, correct? And yes, New Relic, Grafana also, but Grafana, I don't think so. There's a starter module that is automatically supported. Yeah, but Prometheus and New Relic, of course, there is starter modules available. So when I say starter module, inbuilt support is available. Where else? Fifth question. Circuit breakers depend on the dash module to collect the metrics and other details from your app or methods. Correct. Actuator, right? It depends on the actuator. Question 6. If you're using Prometheus as your dashboarding option, which file should contain the configuration details mentioned? Prometheus.yml file, and this YML file will be there in the installation folder of Prometheus. Yeah. Great. And just roughly remember some default values. Okay, maximum threshold count is about 50%. Yeah, in the half open state, how many number of requests are allowed? 10 default. Okay, all that just remember. Team, are you all with me, please? So that's the training session, guys. Yeah. So in the assignment also, I might have asked you to implement a circuit breaker. Maybe I would have mentioned it as Histrix because it's an old document that's there on Top Gear. But of course, if I have mentioned Histrix, the alternative is to implement at least Resilience 4G, right? Please note when you are working on your assignment, dashboarding option through Prometheus is optional. Yeah, it's optional. If it's becoming very difficult to get the Prometheus software and all that, it is optional. Okay, try your best. But if you are unable to set up the monitoring, it's still okay. But at least Resilience 4J you should have implemented so that the actuator endpoints, at least we will be able to see the details. Guys, are you all with me? So going back to our agenda, can you tell me, have we finished all these pointers that we have mentioned about agenda, please? Yes, right. And I'm expecting all of you to please work on your assignments and submit it to me for review. I'm going to give you time till May 5th. Yeah. The May starting also, you have a long weekend coming up. Yeah. All that. So if possible, please try to utilize your time and then work on this. And May 5th, before on or before May 5th, you can submit this for my review. Okay, I will upload a document which will contain the steps that you have to follow to submit the document for me for review. Just religiously follow that steps and I'm sure you'll be able to submit. Yeah. So my deliverables are completed, but hopefully all of you remember there is one last part left over. Any idea? Anybody remembers what is the last part that is left over? The quick assessment. Yeah, the quick assessment. So let me give you the details of the quick assessment. It's mandatory for you to take up and clear, but it is not very straightforward. Give me a minute. We have created a new set of questions, so I need to just pick that details up. Just give me a minute, please. I will see whether it works this way. Okay, first all of you can access the vLearn portal, which is our learning portal of Wipro. I've provided you the URL in the chat window. Yes, it is multiple choice. But multiple choice is the toughest to score. Yeah. Because purposely all options will look very similar. I want you to be careful, all of you. I'll give you the details of how you can access. So once you are here, let me try to sure whether this will work as expected. Give me a minute. So you can use the search icon and don't try it. I'm yet to try this. Please give me a minute. I'll see whether this quick assessment appears directly or no. Okay, we'll do one thing. So what I want you to do is I want you to try this. Once you are here, enter a learning path called LP-439. Yeah, so I'll share this. LP-439. Okay, so once you enter LP-439, you'll get one learning path, which is the microservices Spring Boot. This is the course, but we only want to take up the assessment, right? So no need to take up this entire course, but just click on it. And either if there is register, you can register and then just click on view details. And under this learning path, okay, I'll just guide you. Under this learning path, you'll get a learning path like this. So if there is a register option, please register for all the content, or at least register for the assessment part of it. And once you access it, you will see the learning content. No need to go through the learning content, just go to the assessment part. And in the assessment part, here, this is the quick assessment, which I've already taken. But in your case, once you have registered, you should be able to start this. Okay, so this assessment, it should allow you to start this assessment. In my case, I've already attempted. Yeah, but in your case, it should allow you to start this. Yeah, please complete this. This is the assessment that you need to take up. Okay, and if you click on this also, you can see the details. This is the quick assessment number 5016. Okay, so to take up, just click on this assessment. There'll be an assessment here. Here there will be an option for you to start. Yeah, if that option is not coming up, first register for this course, choose this, and then you can take it. Yeah. So I've given you the LP details in the chat window. I'm available for the next 15 minutes. It'll be a 15-minute assessment, but please be a little careful. Look at the options and the questions very carefully and then answer. Okay, minimum 70% is the passing score. Yeah. So I will be on mute till you guys complete and give me an update. Complete it and give me an update, and then that it's done, and then you can leave. Yeah. So I will be on mute, and temporarily we can even disable recording. Yeah. All the best, guys. Please take it up and give me an update. Team, we have reached the end of our training program. Please note, it's important to clear the quick assessment with a minimum passing score of 70%. And people who have 70% or more of attendance and have cleared the quick assessment, only your data will be updated under training, assuming that you have also used your correct Wipro email ID while joining these sessions. Yeah. Thanks all of you. That's the training. I will be uploading all the pending learning assets in a couple of days, either today and tomorrow. Hope all of you have had a good learning time. I'll be eagerly waiting for all your Top Gear based assignment submissions. And I would really want to see how well you have implemented. Yeah. Thanks and all the best.